Hi there, my name's Andy Gideon, and I just wanted to welcome you down to my workshop. For those that do not know me or are new to my channel, I've been flying model airplanes for 33 years and have flown everything from small electrics up to giant scale aerobatic warbirds and turbine powered jets. Just recently I was asked by FMS to do a review on their beginner series aircraft called the Ranger. This is a 1220 millimeter airplane, which is not very big, but at the same time it's not very small. This is 100% ready to fly. Everything that you need to get this airplane in the air is included in this box. So I'm going to give you a little review of this airplane and kind of do a step-by-step on what all it takes to put this together. If I find anything along the way that I think might need a little bit of tweaking for better success, I'll include my input on that as well. From what I have already read about this airplane and from other videos that I've watched, it looks like it's a pretty good flying airplane. I've actually flown one of these, I think last year. I did fly one of these. I was very impressed with the flying abilities of this airplane. One really unique feature is also included in this box is a set of floats. So for flying off water or off snow in the wintertime, if you live in a place like I do, such as Michigan, it's not always easy to fly off of snow, but when you have a set of floats, you can fly this airplane year-round. So without further ado, let's open up the box and see what's in there. Okay, so I'm not really going to do a complete unboxing. There are other videos on the internet of doing a complete unboxing. I just kind of wanted to show you what it looks like when you do take the main package outside of the box. And it's very well packed to make sure that nothing does get damaged. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to get things all taken out of the foam here, and we'll lay everything around the workbench and kind of go over what it is. Stay tuned. Okay, now that we have taken everything out of the box, as you can see, it's pretty well complete. And as far as when I say complete, I mean built, ready to go. I know there's a lot of folks that call these build videos, but this is an assembly video. Because there's really not a whole lot you have to do to this airplane. But let's go over what we do have here. First and foremost, for the beginners, read the manual. Very thick manual, lots of information in there from basic setups, things that you should look for before trying to fly the airplane, and really good manual, very detailed. Before we get too much into the airplane, one thing I found very, very unique is for the floats. As you can see, there's actually a servo inside the float that operates the water rudder. That's pretty slick, because typically in my years of flying model airplanes, I've flown a lot of airplanes off floats, and usually you have to rig up some kind of wire that goes from the water rudder up to the rudder of the airplane somehow, and it's pretty flimsy, kind of goofy looking. So I'm really impressed about that. I think that's really slick. Getting into the fuselage, as you can see, let me set it here where it's easier to look at. The receiver is not held in when you get it. It does need to be secured to the airplane somehow. And what you can see down in there, that little box, that's actually a stabilization unit. So this plane has what makes it very good for beginners is it can self-stabilize itself in the air. Now what that means is if you're flying this airplane you've never flown before, and you're up flying and you roll it into a bad position and it's getting ready to crash, you don't know what to do, you can simply let go of the radio control and the plane will right itself to level flight. Now that is something that I wish I had when I started learning how to fly 33 years ago. Heck, I wish we had ready to fly foam airplanes when I started learning how to fly. But that's a pretty unique thing. And now that is a feature that does not have to be turned on. So once this airplane has taught you how to fly, you've had fun learning, but now you're feeling pretty confident that you have the controllability to keep this airplane aloft safely, you can turn that feature off and just fly it as a normal model aircraft. For installing the battery, got a nice hatch up here. Strap the battery in with this Velcro strap, and also right here there's already Velcro attached to the bottom on this plywood tray, and it comes with another piece of Velcro that will attach to the supplied battery pack. Now, one thing I do recommend is buy some extra batteries. And the reason I say that is this, like I said, is ready to fly, and it comes with a very basic wall charger. Now, this charger is designed to safely and efficiently charge the battery. Now, having said that, it's very slow. I believe it's going to take roughly an hour to charge the supplied battery, which is not horrible, but at the same time, for average flight times between 5 to 7 minutes, waiting an hour to charge a battery is not something that most people want to do. But once again, this is a beginner setup, so this whole thing, even though the radio system that's supplied, the charger supplied, is not the greatest there is, this is meant for somebody to get into flying without spending a whole lot of money. So if you get into this and realize it's just not for you, you're not too deep out of pocket. But once you do fly this airplane and realize, oh boy, I'm really gonna want to continue in this hobby, most likely you'll want to buy a better charger and some more battery packs. But for now, this will get you in the air. We have a bag here full of goodies. It looks like we have a cord for the charger, the supplied 3-cell 1300 milliamp battery pack. And it looks like some other stuff in there. Like I said, I haven't opened it yet. We'll get into there in a little bit. Looks like any hardware, any mounting screws are all going to be in that bag. The radio that it comes with is a FlySky. I'm not too familiar with this brand, but I have heard of them, and they've been out there for a long time. It's a very basic radio. This is not a $500 radio system. It doesn't have a whole lot of fancy things you can do with it, but it does its purpose. It gets a beginner into the air easily. It does the job, and we'll get more into that later. And what's really nice is you see on the bottom here, it has servo reversing. So once we get this plane set up, we're going to make sure that all the controls move in the right direction. And if for some reason they don't, we can reverse the operation of the servos, which is really, really handy. Especially if you wanted to take the equipment out of this airplane and put it into something else, you could still use this same radio system, and you can adjust the servo direction if needed. So that's kind of a good touch. That means that it's kind of even though it is a very basic transmitter, it's universal because you can use it for something else. Supplied landing gear. Yeah, pretty rigid, but at the same time still has some pretty decent flex. And we have the mounting hardware, not hardware, but the struts for the floats. And these two longer pieces here are going to be the crossbars for the floats as well. Tail section looks really good. I've already gone through and checked all the hinging just to make sure that everything moves like it should and to make sure that there's no tears. And everything so far has looked really good. Moving on to the wings. The struts are temporarily taped into place just so they don't flop around. The one thing that I was rather surprised by, and I would have to say I'm slightly disappointed, is there is no actual wing spar. Typically when wings are joined together, there's going to be a metal or a carbon fiber or fiberglass tube that actually slides into the wing, usually going about halfway or a quarter of the way in on each side, and that's what gives the wing its stiffness. This does not have any actual wing spar that passes through each panel, which means once the wing is mounted to the airplane, the struts are actually just like, let me move this out of the way, actually function just like the full-scale airplane. Now, even though this is a beginner model called a Ranger, it looks a lot like a Cessna 150, which in full scale is a plane that you would learn how to fly with. Now on the full scale, it has to fly with these struts, and the struts attach just into the fuselage here. So if these struts are not attached to the fuselage, the wings could actually fold and you will lose the airplane. But we'll get into that later. Make sure that setup is good. Servos are pre-installed already. Everything looks good. Even has kind of a scale touch on the ailerons and the simulated flaps. There are no flaps on this airplane, but it looks like they are. But you know, they've simulated a nice corrugation on there, so it really does look like a Cessna 150. That's pretty cool. It's the advances in the hobby for making a basic trainer type airplane like this look like a full-scale aircraft is really pretty cool. Because when I learned how to fly, trainers usually did not have a specific look. They did a specific job, which was to help you learn how to fly. Where now, I mean, you're learning how to fly on an airplane that really looks like, you know, a plane that you'd see taking off out of your local airport. Now, one really cool thing is look at the nose gear on this thing. It's like a giant, trying to see if I can work it and hold the plane at the same time. It's a giant spring. I mean, look at that. That is cool. And it's still hooked up to a servo, attached to the rudder as well. But that whole, basically, strut is a giant spring. Now that is something. Now one of the first things I'm going to do, especially once I start plugging things in to check out the radio system, I'm going to take this prop off. And the reason for that is because this is a very basic system, there is no throttle cut on this transmitter. Now typically when you're flying electric models, you set up what's called a throttle cut, where you have a switch that you would flip, and that makes your throttle no longer have any control over the motor itself. Now this is a very basic setup, so it does not have that. So once the battery is plugged in, if you're not paying attention and you hit that throttle, that prop's going to start spinning. So you have to be very, very careful. Be very cautious of that. So that kind of gives us a quick overview of what you get out of the box. And it looks like the assembly is not going to take very long. So I'm not going to do any of the actual assembly on camera. I'll just bring you back in for just some close-ups as I progressively put the airplane together, just to show you what I did, how I did it, and if there was any things I had to change along the way. So here we go. Okay, so I've gone ahead and bolted on the tail section here, and just 2 screws that go on the back. The instructions will let you know which of the screws to use. And it does come, believe it or not, with a supplied Allen driver to use for the screws. And they're Allens, which is really good. Normally, these ready-to-fly type airplanes use a Phillips head or a flat head that usually strip out. This actually has pretty good quality hardware. Now, I was getting ready to bolt the landing gear on, and I wanted to show this to you real quick. You can see there's this little keyway here. So it can only go in there one way. You can't do this backwards or anything like that. It's only going to go one way. Now you'd be tempted to screw that landing gear in just the way you see it. But nope, don't do that. This plastic cover has to go in there first, like this. And that's what holds that in there. Now for the floats, obviously the landing gear is going to be removed. And as you can see, there's a slot right here and a slot right here that we use to put the floats on. That'll be for another time. Because once again, this is a beginner type airplane, and when you're going to be learning how to fly, I recommend staying away from the water for obvious reasons. So I'm going to get some more things put together here, and I'll see you soon. Okay, I've just joined the wing halves together, and this was actually very simple. There's just two little pegs right here. You just slide them together. 2 of the shorter screws are what hold the 2 wing panels together. So if you ever wanted to take this wing apart for transport, it's literally just 2 screws and they separate. The only thing I did add is right here where the aileron servo wires go into the wing. I just put a little piece of tape on each side just so they can't, you know, pull out or anything like that. What I'll end up doing is I'll probably take a couple zip ties and just kind of keep these wires tied together much better so they don't flop around in the airplane too much. Now, one thing I did want to point out is because of the way that this wing is attached to the fuselage, especially for beginners, beginners have a tendency to fly faster than they should and make abrupt movements. So instead of making a nice gradual turn, a lot of times a beginner will bank the airplane and really crank it around. And what that's going to do is put a lot of stress on the wings. Basically, it's going to cause the wings to try to fold in the up position. Now that's what these struts are for. They attach to the side of the airplane to keep the wings from actually breaking in half. So having said that, one thing I notice is that where these struts actually mount to the wing, it amounts to this plastic plate right here. So what I did is I went on each side of the wing and just grabbed the strut right by the base here and gave it a good pull. I'm not trying to rip it out of the airplane by any means, but just to make sure that they're not loose or damaged or anything. Because if this comes loose, the airplane will come apart as far as the wings will fold and the plane will crash. Now while you're flying, if you ever see one of these wing struts flopping in the breeze, slow the airplane down and immediately land. Other than that, everything on the wing looks pretty straightforward. I am currently charging the supplied battery with the supplied charger, just to see how that works. I have my own charger, I got my own batteries, but I do want to see how this one's going to work. So at this point, we're just about ready to start plugging things in. And also, one thing, I'm looking around just to make sure I didn't forget. It looks like just for shipping purposes, the ends of the gimbals, or the sticks, are not attached. They do come in a bag. And I do not believe the, the 4 AA batteries, I believe, are not supplied. So I'm going to have to go grab some of those real quick. So let me figure out how to get this thing working, and I'll bring you back, hopefully with some servos moving. Okay, so I've just charged up the battery. Charged up just fine on the stock charger. When you first turn the charger on, there's 3 lights on the very front of the charger here that'll turn green. When you plug the battery in, they'll be red. Once they all turn green, you know your battery's good to go. Now from here on, I'll use my own charger just because I have one that I can adjust the charge rate to a faster rate that I know the battery can handle. But once again, this is for the beginner that may not necessarily know how to properly use these batteries and what you can get away with. So to get it started up, I've put the 4 AA's in the transmitter battery, or in the transmitter. So now when we turn it on, we get a beep and we get a green light. So we know we're good to go there. I'll turn it off here. And also, as I said, the ends of the sticks are not attached when you take it out of the box, which is, you know, it's fine. But they're a 2-piece system for the stick, so you can actually change the height of the stick depending on if you have smaller hands, bigger hands, whether or not you're going to fly with your thumbs, or what's popular is flying with a pinch method like this. What's nice is this transmitter is a good shape to where if you fly with thumbs or a pinch flyer, it's very comfortable either way. So now to get this started up, once again, no prop. Take the prop off of the airplane. You do not want this taken off on you. Take it from somebody who knows, like me. That thing hurts if it gets you. Alright, so transmitter's on, green light is on. I'm not going to worry about actually sliding the battery where it needs to go. Now this is a, what connector is this? This is a XT60. So that's another point I wanted to bring to your attention. If you want to buy more batteries, you can get these from FMS, or there are other places, other sources for batteries. Just make sure you get a battery that's about this size. This is a 3-cell, so 11.1 volts. and it's a 1300 milliamp battery. Now, I'm not sure how much bigger battery you can put in the airplane without affecting the center of gravity, but I would have a feeling you could put up to an 1800 in there with no problems. But if you're going to buy a battery, make sure it has the same connector. Alright, so first we'll make sure that our throttle is in the down position, everything is neutral, and we'll plug it in. It's plugged in. Now we wait. And we heard the motor actually initiate, in other words the speed control. It made 3 beeps, which indicates how many cells the battery is. And you may or may not have heard it, but you could hear the servos kind of chatter a little bit, and that's because this does have stabilization. So I don't have the elevator servo hooked up yet, but it definitely works. Let's check the steering. That works. Now let's give it some throttle. Once again, there's no prop, so no danger. And it works. And what I'm going to check now is to make sure that the motor is actually turning in the proper direction. Now what we're looking for is the prop to spin counterclockwise. And you can tell just by working the throttle a little bit, and I can tell it's working in the right direction, so that's fine. Now as far as the stabilization goes, this is actually a 6-channel radio system. Or maybe, no, I take that back. I believe the radio system is primarily a 4-channel, but it does have a 6-channel receiver. So FlySky, even though this is a very basic 4-channel radio system, they do make other electronics. So you could use, let's say this radio will not suit your purposes for a different aircraft, but FlySky does make transmitters that are a little bit more sophisticated, more options, computer radios and so forth. But this receiver will work for other aircraft as well, so keep that in mind. Alright, so we have operation. Now, this switch here, which is SWA, up in the corner here, it's a 3-position switch. So when it is in the center position, there's no stabilization. So when I move the airplane around, you can't hear anything. Nothing is happening. Now I believe, and I may be wrong, make sure you read the instruction manual, when the switch is in the top position all the way forward, now when I move this, you can hear the servos moving, which means the stabilization is working. Now what stabilization is for beginners, this is very crucial, is that will keep the airplane steady. So if you're flying on a very windy day, these smaller electric airplanes get bounced around in the wind a lot more than the much larger gas-powered airplanes that I usually fly. So having that stabilization is going to keep the airplane a lot more steady on windy days. Now I'm pretty sure the switch all the way forward, unless I read the manual wrong, double check. The switch all the way to the forward position is not only stabilization, but that's also safe mode. What that means is the airplane, if you're learning how to fly yourself and you get the airplane into a bad situation and you don't know what to do, you know, you're sitting there, you're cranking those sticks all over the place, you simply let go of the sticks and the safe mode will bring the airplane back to a straight and level flight. So the switch in the center position, which would be neutral or off, now it's strictly whatever you move is all that's going to move the servos in the airplane. And the switch all the way in the down position, now once again, I could be wrong if down or all the way up is safe on or safe off. But with the switch all the way down or toward you, once again, now we have movement of the servos working in stabilization. Now the more I'm looking at it, I think the switch, and once again I have to get more into the manual, seems like when the switch is all the way down or toward you, that is the safe mode, which is going to keep the airplane self-leveling and the stabilization. And this switch over here does nothing. That does nothing for this airplane. So now, all I need to do is hook up the elevator push rod, because the rudder is already hooked up. It's already attached in the box, as well as the nose wheel. We'll make sure everything's going in the right direction. Once again, we do have servo reversing, which is a really good quality to have, even on a basic transmitter, to have the servo reversing. So we'll get all that double checked, and I will bring you back. Okay, now that I've got the elevator push rod hooked up, this is only disconnected because the tail is the stabilizer is not connected to the airplane in the box. Now the way it connects is very simple. We have just the basic push rod with a Z-bend that attaches to the servo arm, and then back here is a plastic clevis that goes through the control horn, and there's a little piece of tubing that slides forward just to clamp it so it can't come undone. Now I did have to adjust this by turning it in about 5 or 6 turns to make sure that the elevator is level. Now the radio does have trim adjustments, but you want to get it mechanically as straight as possible before your first flight. Now, I'm glad I brought up the servo reversing, because as we look at it, holding the transmitter, we have right rudder input, the rudder goes right, left is left, obviously throttle works. Now let's watch the elevator. When I go up elevator, the elevator is actually going down. So right now the elevator is backwards. So now we'll go here, and once again, making sure there's no prop, because what if these are labeled wrong? I don't know. This switch right here is labeled elevator. Let's switch it, and let's see what the elevator does. Trying to get an orientation, you can see here. Now when I go up on the stick, I get up elevator. Perfect. Now one thing I am noticing right now, because once again, very basic radio system, there's a lot of control throw in this elevator. In other words, when you move the stick, you're getting a lot of movement on that elevator. And my decades of flying experience can look at that and say that's going to be a very touchy airplane to fly. So normally if you had a computerized radio, you could go in and dial down the rates. So where right now this is your full up elevator on the stick, if it was a computer radio, I could program it to that is full up elevator instead of that. So this requires a mechanical setup, which is something that everybody I think should know anyway. And what it is right now on the control horn out here on the elevator, the clevis is already all the way out, which is going to be the least amount of travel on this portion of the control surface. So if we want less movement, we need to take the push rod here and actually move it further up closer to the servo. So that way maximum servo travel is actually going to be less movement going back to the elevator. So right now there is 1, 2, 3, 4 holes. I think I'm going to put it on the second one to the end. Right now it is on the end, which is fine for me. I can fly any airplane with any controls, maximum, it doesn't matter. I've been doing this a long time. But I have a feeling for a beginner, that's going to be a pretty sensitive airplane. So I'm going to get that adjusted, and we'll be good to go there. Now at this point, I'm still not going to put the prop on because I want to get the wing attached, get the ailerons set up, because let's say the ailerons are reversed. I go to reverse the ailerons on here. What if something was mislabeled, plugged in wrong, and it reverses the throttle and it takes off on me? Keep that prop off the airplane for now. All right, I'm going to get some things hooked up here, and I'll bring you back. Okay, so I got the ailerons hooked up. I'll do a close-up here in a minute, but there's 2 wires, and there's 2 wires in the fuselage that go to the stabilization box. None of the servos are directly connected to the receiver. It all goes through the stabilization. So if for some reason you didn't want that stabilization in there at all, you would have to unplug everything and then plug all of your servos and your ESC directly to the receiver. But for now, there's 2 wires that are marked aileron that come off of the stabilization unit, and that's called a Y cable. It's basically one channel, which is ailerons. We only have one channel, but it can go to 2 different servos. Now it doesn't matter which one goes where. There are 2, but they can go either direction. It doesn't matter. You just have to make sure when you plug them in, you have 3 wires and they are color coded. Make sure those wires line up, because if you have 3 wires plugged in and you do it backwards, not only will it not work, it could potentially catch fire and you'll burn up a servo, you could burn up your receiver. You don't want any of that. So I've plugged it in. Now let's just check and see the direction. Now I'm backwards right now, so I'm going to have to kind of explain it. But when I go right stick, the right aileron is going up. Now I'm looking at the wing on the bottom, obviously, and the left aileron is going down. Now that's the right direction. Same thing with left. The left aileron is going up, the right aileron is going down. So our direction is good, and the control surfaces are neutral, which is perfect. Now I mentioned earlier that this has trims. Now let's say for the first flight, the plane always wants to kind of roll to the right a little bit. You have these little trim tabs. And what this does is this changes the neutral position of your servos. So it's pretty slick, because these are foam airplanes, so they will kind of change shape a little bit, especially if they're out in the sun or a hot, humid day. Then you go to a dry day where it's cooler. These airplanes will kind of expand and contract a little bit, so it may be necessary to trim the airplane every now and then. So you have trims for all your controls. The only one you're probably never going to have to concern yourself with is the throttle trim. That's pretty much is where it is. You don't really have to mess with that. So everything works good. Everything is in the right direction. At this point, all I need to do is button up the radial gear on the inside, get the receiver mounted, probably with just some sticky tape or maybe some hot glue, and we're about ready to fly. If it wasn't for me yammering on so much, we'd already be flying this airplane. Alright, stand by. Okay, so I got the receiver and everything all buttoned up in there. Next I'm going to turn it around here real quick. And all I've done is I just hot glued it into this little cavity here on the side where it fit really good. And there's 2 antennas in there. There's one I have mounted going up and down, and one down there going back to forth. Now the way 2.4 works is each of those antennas sends out a broadcast. Okay? So these always should be orientated 90 degrees to each other. So that way you're broadcasting in all directions. Now that's for redundancy, to make sure that you don't lose signal. And the hot glue keeps everything nice, it keeps it tight, but if you had to get it out of there, it's not permanent. So that is why using something like hot glue works good for things like that. Now do check them, because if this is in the back seat of your car on a hot day, that hot glue could let go and those things could come loose. So just keep an eye on it. But this is what I was talking about earlier. This is the Reflex V2. That is the stabilization module. So as you can see, all of the servos are plugging directly into it, and then there are jumper wires coming off that are plugging into the receiver itself. So if you wanted to bypass the stabilization, let's say you didn't want to use this transmitter, you had your own, and you didn't want anything to do with the stabilization, you just eliminate that box and you plug all your servos directly into your own receiver or the receiver that comes with it. Now this is the Y cable I was telling you about. As you can see where it plugs into that box, they both go to one channel. So it doesn't matter which servo either of these wires plug into, just as long as the colors line up. Now another thing, for the floats. It comes with a separate Y harness for the floats. So if you're going to run the floats, what you're going to do is on that box, you're going to find which one is labeled rudder, unplug it, plug this into that spot, plug the rudder servo into here, and the float servo into the other. So now your floats will work with your rudder. So keep that aside. Okay, at this point I'm ready to attach the wing, put the prop on, and secure the battery. So let me get that done. Stand by. Okay, so to attach the wing, There are 2 bolts up on the top. Might be kind of hard to see here. Yeah, I might have to move my camera a little bit, but there's 2 bolts up here on the top, and they can only go in one direction, and they're a quarter turn, and they snap and lock into place. There's a little arrow. Can only do it one way. Now the struts are kind of neat, but at the same time, I'm going to be honest, are making me a little nervous. They simply slide into this little keyway in here, and then you push it back, and that locks it. So right now, those wings cannot fold. They can't go anywhere. They're structural. The wings are now firmly in place, both positive and negative. Now once again, that connection does make me a little bit nervous, because if that pops out of there and that strut comes off, that wing is now pretty soft. So I'm going to keep an eye on that, and I'm going to see if maybe I can find out, or I can come up with some kind of, something maybe to stick in there to make sure it can't slide back out. But other than that, all I need to do now is put the prop back on, and we're ready to fly. Okay, just wanted to point this out. When you're putting the prop back on, pay close attention when you remove it. That's very important, because this prop is intended to spin counterclockwise, so the prop has to go on in the proper direction. Now on this particular prop, behind this nut and washer, there's actually some writing on there, and it says 10-5. Now that's telling you the length, which is 10, and 5, which is the pitch. That's especially on this particular prop, that's going to be facing forward. Now to put the spinner on, literally just clicks in. Once again, I'm a little suspicious about that, but hey, if it works, it works. Now another thing is, if you are a true beginner and you're going to be learning how to fly on this airplane, buy some spare props. All parts for this airplane, including props, are available through FMS. If for some reason they're not available, or your local hobby shop has something different, as long as you get a 10-5 electric prop, you don't want to get a 10-5 prop for like a glow engine, like something like this. This is for a, well, you definitely don't want this. This is a 16-inch prop, but this is for a gas or glow-powered engine. So make sure you're getting an electric prop. Now I've already put the battery inside with the supplied Velcro, held it in with the strap. Let me get the transmitter here. Power it up. We got our green light. Now it's very important not to move the airplane while it's initializing, especially when it has the stabilization. And remember, there is no throttle cut. So right now, if I bump that throttle, that thing's coming at me. And everything just initialized, all the servos moved. And treat this plane with respect. Once again, no throttle, there's no throttle hold or throttle cut. So make sure when you plug in that battery, you do not leave the airplane unattended. Don't leave it facing anybody, because it's not hard to accidentally bump that throttle. Now let's just give it a quick run here. I don't want to run it all the way up since I'm in my workshop and I don't want things going everywhere. One thing I did is the canopy fits on there really good. It's a friction fit up here where it goes into the cabin area. Then there's just this little pin right here that snaps into a clip up here in the nose. I actually bent this out a little bit so it has more of a positive snap when it plugs in. So now when I put it in there, it really holds it on there good. So now we'll take a look at our plane here, and that is ready to go. And I have a cat that's wanting attention. So right, left, up, down. Let's switch over to rudder, right rudder, left rudder, and of course throttle. And right now the stabilization is on, so when we pick the airplane up and move it, you can hear all the servos moving around. That tells you it's working. If you're unsure about the stabilization, of whether or not it's working correctly or if it starts acting up, just move this switch into the center position, and now it's 100% viewing the airplane. Okay, so that is the basic setup of the FMS Ranger 1220 millimeter. It takes a lot to impress me, mainly because I've been doing this for so long. I usually build my own airplanes from wood and composite materials. This is very well put together. I mean, when they say ready to fly out of the package, they mean it. This required very little assembly time. It took longer because I was explaining the process as I went, but realistically, 30 minutes is all you really need. And while of the 30 minutes that you're putting it together, that's about how long it's going to take for the battery to top off. So if you were to buy this in the morning or get it shipped to your house in the morning, by lunchtime you're out flying, no problem. So I'm looking forward to getting this into the air. I'll probably end up flying it on one of my battery packs that I already have. But I will use this one as well, just to see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, most batteries are all being made from the same manufacturer anyway. They're just sold under different different labels and stuff. But other than that, they're all pretty similar. Today it's pretty cold, pretty windy. I'm going to see what it's like tomorrow, and if we get some good weather, we'll get this thing in the air. So that'll do it for now on the FMS Ranger, and let's head out somewhere and get this thing flying. Morning, everybody. So it's the very next day from when I did the build / assembly of the airplane. It's currently Sunday morning, about 8 o'clock. Very, very cold, about 21 degrees. Supposed to be pretty windy today, so wanted to get this out of the way early. Did not feel like going out to our flying field, so we have a private school here that's close to my home. Areas like this are usually fairly well suited for flying model airplanes of this caliber. Definitely wouldn't want to bring large size glow-powered or gas-powered airplanes to a place like this. And plus there's nobody here, so we're not going to be at risk of injuring anybody if something were to go wrong. So I have charged not only the supplied 3-cell 1300 mil pack with the supplied charger, I actually charged 3 more of my own personal batteries with it. And the charger does take a while, but it will charge basically any 3-cell or any 2-cell battery with no problems. And I'm going to be mounting the battery basically centered on the tray on the inside. This might take me a little bit longer to do because it is very cold out here. My hands already don't work all that great in the cold. Okay, transmitter is on. Stabilization is in the off position. Wait for it to initialize here. All control surfaces have initialized. Because even when you have stabilization turned off, it's still going to do its thing. It's still going to initialize. The servos are going to move. It's just not currently doing anything. So I'm going to take it up with the stabilization turned off, and then I'm going to try the switch both in the forward and back position just to see what the differences are and how it flies. First we'll get it up and get it trimmed out. Okay, the game plan is I'm going to take off obviously on the pavement, and I'm going to get it up over here and fly over the grass. Even though these smaller electric airplanes are not very big, not very heavy, try to avoid flying over buildings and cars and people. I mean, let's be safe. Do a pre-flight check. Right, left, up, down, right, left. Okay, here we go. Did not take too much runway to get that in the air. Okay, and right now I'm just going to kind of feel out the airplane, see what it needs. It needs a little bit left rudder trim and a little bit left aileron. And I'm slowed down to just below half throttle right now. but as you can see, it does not need a whole lot of power to keep this thing in the air. The battery probably could use going a little bit further forward. It's very sensitive on the tail right now. Just trying to get everything trimmed out. Bring it down low here. Full power, straight up into a climb. No problem with power whatsoever. Okay, we'll bring it around. Let's do a nice roll. No problem with a roll. Okay, I'm going to go and put the stabilization switch in the farthest forward position, so the furthest away from me. And already I can tell that it's not as affected by the wind. And let's see if this is the safe version here. Nope, because it will still fly upside down. Okay, now we're stabilization off, so the switch is in the middle/neutral position. Now we'll go switch all the way down. Now right there, see what I did? I turned it to the left, and it straightened out. I turned it to the left, I let go of the sticks, it straightens out. Pull up, roll it over, let go of the sticks, it straightens out. So right now, the switch is all the way toward me. And the controls are a little bit sluggish, but that's because it's not allowing me to move to over control the airplane. So let's try it again. I'm going to do a hard bank over, let go of the radio. I just let go of the sticks, and it went straight. And it actually wouldn't even let me turn it all the way over. So let's try it again. I'm going to try to put it into a position it doesn't like. Okay, I'm letting go of the radio, throttle's off. Straight and level, all by itself. And it really wouldn't even let me completely get it around a loop. Okay, now we're off and back into just normal stabilization. So now I have full control of the airplane. Do some aerobatics here. Oh yeah. Pretty good snap rolls, since I had already mentioned that it kind of looks like a Cessna 150. Actually snaps fairly well. Bring it around for a frozen finger touch and go here. I forgot to set my stopwatch on my watch here, and this is with stabilization on because it is quite windy. And look at that, straight vertical. Now switch all the way back. Now it's in safe mode, literally flying itself. Still have control of the airplane, but I'll bring it over right here, and I'm going to turn it hard to the left. Let go of the radio, levels out. Pull up, let go of the radio, throttle down. It's on its own. Right now, my hands are completely off, and it's just staying level. So that works really well. Probably the main key feature to the safe mode is it will not allow you to really roll the airplane upside down or bank it too far. Do a 4-point roll here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was 4 shades of ugly. I apologize. My fingers are extremely cold right now. Okay, we're going to put it back into the stabilize mode, not safe mode. See if it does aerobatics better like that. 4-point roll. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pull up, do a turnaround maneuver. Same thing over here. Pull vertical. Roll the wings. It's actually pretty aerobatic.
Now we'll do what's called an avalanche, which is a loop with a snap roll at the top. Capable of doing some pretty advanced aerobatic maneuvers. I'm impressed, it flies really good. It'd be much better if I could feel my hands, but other than that, not too bad. Now I don't know the condition of the battery, so I'm just gonna kinda wing it here. As soon as I start noticing a loss of power, and the fact that it's very cold out will shorten the life of your flight times. Not quite a touch and go. We'll pull vertical, roll the wings, come back down in front. Let's try a Lumpshabach. I didn't like that too much. It will do it, but so it's very aerobatic, and I've been putting quite a bit of stress on those wings, and I'm not noticing the struts coming loose or anything like that. Do another touch and go here. Let's do a bouncy one. There we go. Just to smack that gear into the ground a little bit. Let's try a hammerhead turn. Pull up, chop the power, full rudder, a little bit of power. Beautiful hammerhead. And right now I am flying in stabilized mode, which does keep it a little bit more steady. But even these smaller planes are... Okay, so we had some technical difficulty there. I'm going to use one of my own batteries, which is an HRB 3-cell 1500 milliamp, so pretty similar. And I'm moving it a little bit further forward on the tray, so it's basically centered on the strap that holds the battery in now. Let's see if it's a little less sensitive on the tail. Okay, plugged it in. Once again, don't move the airplane too much after you plug it in until everything initializes. There go the servos, motor's happy. I put the lid for this thing somewhere, not sure where. Stand by. Can't forget to put the lid on there. Okay. Now something for not only the beginner, but experienced flyers as well. I've been flying for 33 years, and I've seen people that have been flying as long or longer than me that do not do this. Before every single flight, check your controls. Right, left, up, down, right, left. That is extremely important. Just doing some trim adjustments from the previous flight. Needed a little bit more rudder trim. Okay, let's get this thing in the air. Much better. Just moving that battery just a little bit further forward helped big time. Okay, so for this flight, I'm just going to have some fun with it. Go up, outside snap roll just fine. I'm going to keep it in stabilized mode, just because, why not? Up here, pull vertical, do a Lumpshabach. Not too bad on a Lumpshabach, not the greatest, but it still is a trainer after all. I'm fighting quite a bit of wind. Okay, we'll bring it down for a touch and go here. Pull vertical, roll the wings. Now even with the stabilization on, it still does get bounced around in the wind. So try to fly it in as calm conditions as possible. So very good power. Pull up for a series of snap rolls here. Vertical snaps, not a problem at all. Very aerobatic. And seeing as how it does fly a little bit better with that battery further forward, I would say you could probably go up to a little bit larger battery. Like I said, probably an 1800 is the biggest before you might be getting too nose heavy. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and bring it in here. I'm getting cold. Actually, I'm gonna roll it inverted, see how it maintains upside down. Takes quite a bit of down elevator, but that's totally fine. That's to be expected. Do a negative pushover. Does really good. All right, let's go ahead and bring it in. I'm gonna bring it in with the stabilization completely off. For me, it handles a little bit better with it off. I'm just used to that. I'm used to correcting for the wind. Nice and slow. Not too shabby. Okay, so I would have to say, for a guy like me that's not really big into electrics, I'm very impressed with this airplane. It's nothing too fancy, but at the price point, that's kind of the point. An advanced flyer like myself can still have a lot of fun with this airplane, especially with the floats. I think it's going to be really fun with the floats. I did put the floats together and put the Y harness that I showed you inside the airplane, and everything does work. I just haven't flown it off the water yet. I probably won't fly it off the water for a while, because in case I do have to go swimming, that water's pretty cold. So we're going to wait on that. But just kind of a summary here. If you are a very, very beginner, never flown before, you can fly this airplane. And if you break it, parts are available, and because it is made out of EPO foam, it's repairable as well. So if you are teaching yourself without assistance, I can guarantee it's not going to stay looking too pretty that long. But that is what it's meant for. Now, I always recommend either getting involved with a local flying club or at least somebody that has flown airplanes before to at least do what I did, take it up, get it trimmed out, and just kind of give you some pointers, because there's no worse feeling than having your first flying experience be a bad one. By having said that, with the stabilization on, which is the switch all the way forward, that just keeps the airplane steady in the wind. Switch all the way back. I could barely roll the airplane further than this angle. It kept wanting to bring it back to level by itself. So if you are a beginner, that is the mode you want to be in. But yeah, struts and everything stayed in. They don't look like they've moved at all. And plus, the aerodynamic forces are pushing those struts back, so it is going to be difficult for them to come forward and pop out of there. Other than that, with the battery further forward, the elevator was a lot less sensitive. I did already move the push rod to the second hole from the end, but it probably can go even further up toward the servo, which will give it less travel. I shouldn't hold that next to my face like that. Remember, there's no throttle cut. But because I've been doing this so long, you notice how I hold the transmitter, my thumb is actually locking that throttle down. So for a very basic airplane, I mean, the radio's nothing special, but it works fantastic. Everything that I've done here is with all the supplied equipment, except this flight is with my own battery pack. No difference in performance, flew just fine. So that wraps up the review for the FMS Ranger 1220 millimeter. If you're looking for a beginner plane or just something to toss around and have fun with, this is for you. All right, till next time. Later.